Hi, it's Ian with a Japanese knife sharpening fundamentals tutorial. I will be doing several of these in the series where I cover the fundamentals of sharpening on Japanese whetstones. So I have done other videos covering the types of knives as well as more in-depth information about sharpening supplies. So I'll link those in the description. You can check those out if you're interested in following up on that information. I've also completed recently a 30 days of knife skills video series where there's 30 different vegetables and fruits that I cut. So once your knives are nice and sharp, you might check those out to see what you can do with them. The method I use is primarily taught to me by John at Japanese Knife Imports. He's has this great store in Los Angeles and is an expert on all things Japanese knives. So he has a wonderful store with excellent products, knives, sharpening supplies, and such. And he also has a great series of videos online as well. This method works for, of course, Japanese knives, both single and double bevel knives. I'll be mostly covering double bevel knives in this series. I think learning how to sharpen your own knives in this method is not hard at all to learn. It takes practice to get good at it, but once you understand the basic concepts and learn how to use your senses, which we'll be talking a lot about here, I think it won't take you very long to get very good results. And the best part about it is that you can always practice at home on your knives or on your friends and family's knives, and you can build your skill and also control what kind of outcome you get with your knife sharpening. Anybody can do this, so I highly recommend doing it. You can also feel free to leave comments below or get in touch with me through my website, which will be linked as well. So here, the basic equipment I have my knives, I have my stone, I have some water, and that's really all you need to get started. So I have a base here that raises it. You don't need that, definitely don't need it to start. I would say you just need something to hold your stone. It could be a wet towel like this. You do need some water. You need one stone, like a medium grit. I would say something around 1,000 grit or so is a great place to start if you're just going to have one stone. And then, of course, you need your knife. So the first step that we're going to be talking about, the very first step before you even start sharpening, is going to be examining the knife. So here I have a knife from Japanese Knife Imports. It's a gyuto, a Japanese chef's knife, and I highly recommend having something to protect it. I usually have this on the wall on my magnet, but if you put it away or you travel with it, it's very nice to have, this is saya. It's a sheath, Japanese style sheath for your knives, so it's nice to have something like this. If you don't have that for your knives, then it's perfectly fine, I think, to make your own like I did here. Just cardboard and tape is all I did. So that way you can put it away in your drawer and never worry about it. It stays safer. Your knives will be better taken care of and such. So, of course, you can buy just all-purpose saya or knife sheaths online. There's all different kinds, so they're not very expensive. So I think it's worth investing in ways to protect your knife. So the first thing is to examine. You might notice that maybe your knife is dull and that's why you're sharpening it. Or you might notice that there's damage, or there's a few different reasons why you might be wanting to sharpen. Here's a simple drawing of some reasons why. One might be that you dropped somebody dropped your knife in the sink or the floor and the tip has chipped or bent over, and that's something that is not that hard to fix once you know what you're doing on a stone. Maybe more common than that is chipping in your blade, depending on what kind of knife. Some knives tend to chip more easily than others. The chip could be very small, but if you put it in the light like it is here, against a white or some kind of a neutral background, and kind of adjust the angle, you should be able to see if there's any chipping or microchipping that you feel like is kind of getting in the way of good cutting performance. So another way to check is to cut through paper to see if it's catching. That's a great way to see if there's any chipping. Sometimes we want to fix the edge geometry. So in this case, in this drawing, I've exaggerated some shapes of knives that could have occurred over time where it becomes concave and it won't make contact with a board. That's a definite problem. So I would take material off the heel as well as this area so that this becomes straighter and it works better. Just like the tip, the heel might be either too sharp for your liking, or it might be too rounded for your liking. So you might fix that. So those are some of the major, besides being dull, some of the major reasons why you might want to sharpen your knives or actually fix them on your stone. So this is my regular everyday knife, but this is a knife I picked up, I think, for $1 at Goodwill as a tool for teaching. So usually during my workshops and lessons, I will follow John's advice of using a Sharpie to mark your blade. And this way we can get a visual on exactly where we're sharpening. So if the whole, here's an example of, this is the blade here, here's the Sharpie mark. If the entire Sharpie is coming off, then you know that your angle is too flat, meaning it's too flat this way, and you're taking off all the Sharpie, and you're probably not hitting the right area, or your angle is not correct. And conversely, if only the very, very tip is coming off and the actual cutting edge is not fully being taken off with a Sharpie, then you know that your angle is too high, and you can correct that in the future. So it's a great way to understand what's happening with your knife. There's definitely no one angle to sharpen at. We can't just say use a 10-degree angle, 15-degree angle, 20-degree angle. Every knife is different, and you know, every person's usage of knives and the type of knife, there's so many variables that we just can't generalize and just say this is the best angle. So that's a great thing to do. I've done that here with a permanent marker. This is a wide tip permanent marker that I've done both sides, and I've made sure to cover both the cutting edge as well as this major surface area. And that's going to be the very first thing, is to put it on the stone. Make sure that the stone is wet. I like to use something like this or a spray bottle. You could also have it near a sink and just put water on it if that's easier. But I like the control of these. So the first thing we're going to do is to talk about the holding the knife. And I like to make sure my second finger is close to the blade. First finger is on the spine, and the thumb is on the heel here. And then we're going to have about a 45-degree angle this way. And trying to keep the arm kind of in a straight line, and we're going to be going back and forth in this motion. So we're not going to go in this motion, we're going to go back and forth in this motion. And in the beginning, we're going to just focus on this heel portion, about 1/4 or 1/3 of this bottom portion of the blade. We'll focus on that. And in the beginning, just to see what our angle is and to get used to the motion, we're just going to, I will just pick an angle about, the reason I have some coins here is just to give an idea. I think I'm going to start with approximately 3/4 underneath the spine, between the spine and the stone. I will choose that as a starting point and put 2 or 3 fingers. I usually do 2 fingers directly over the stone, very close to the edge but not on the edge. And I'm going to do several strokes back and forth like this. And slow is fine. So about 10 passes, and then I'll wipe it off with a towel, flip it over, and look to see what's going on with the Sharpie. So from here to here is where I've been sharpening, and it's about 1 millimeter or slightly more than 1 millimeter, which is actually the cutting edge width of this knife. So it looks like it's pretty consistent from here to here. The very heel, there's still some Sharpie left, so that could be either I was putting pressure in the wrong place, or possibly the heel is coming off the stone. This is one of the most common mistakes for beginners, is that they're not paying attention to the very heel. So since we're focusing on the bottom portion of the knife, we want to make sure that we get the entire portion, including the heel. So I'll make sure this time, focus on having my thumb right above the heel. I will look more carefully to see if the heel is staying on and do a few more strokes. And then wipe it off, flip it over, and then we got it. So that was probably the case, that either I didn't have that pressure on there or it was coming off. And the pressure is not that much that I'm putting down. Right now it's just a matter of learning our angle and getting this motion down. If you're not used to using this back and forth motion like this, we want to make sure we're relaxed and controlled. There's no need to go fast. And there's no need to push that much initially. The reason to push more is to speed up your sharpening, but that can create other issues. So the more you do that, the more pressure you put, the more material it's taking off, and it might be going more quickly than you would prefer until you know kind of what you're doing on your setup with your knives. So a lot of times people in workshops are worried about ruining their knives, and they just bring their worst knives, but usually if you're careful about it and follow these steps one by one, there's almost no way you can ruin a knife. So more likely the knife would become damaged during cleaning, or for example being dropped, or cutting something frozen or things like that, or leaving it out for it to oxidize and eventually rust. That's what we're trying to do. And once you get the motion down, you can continue on, and the first thing we're looking for in this portion is to form a burr. And the burr will be felt on the top side, opposite of where I'm sharpening. So a burr is this small piece of metal. So here's the stone, here's the knife. I'm sharpening this side, the side that's on the stone, and on the opposite side is the burr formation. It's this extra material that, as I take off metal on this side, extra material is sort of flopping over, and I will be running my finger or thumb on this side of the blade, and I'll feel it catch compared to the place I'm not sharpening. So there's no burr here, and I'm starting to feel a little bit of a burr here and not quite so much here. So this is a very cheap knife, and the only reason it's going quickly is because I've already sharpened this during workshops as a kind of a demonstration knife. So otherwise, if it's a very dull knife, dull meaning the edge would be rounded off like this, and you have lost that point. In general, the better your knife quality, the more fun and more easily you can sharpen on stones like this. Something like this, a lower quality, cheaper knife can take a long time to sharpen. But this is going pretty quickly because the edge is already pretty much formed. So keeping the stone wet, making sure that it's sliding, I will continue to try to get burr formation on the bottom here. So until we get that, I would recommend not going on. If you're starting off, it's very important to have good technique where you understand burr formation, what it feels like, understand how it feels different from this to this, and know, making sure you have good control with how much Sharpie you're taking off. So that is the first step. That will be the end of this video. In the next video, we'll continue up the knife, and then we'll get to the second side as well. So let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the next video.